Okay, today I'm going to step you through a feature that we don't often talk about during our demonstrations, and I just wonder why that is. Today we're going to cover role-based administration in the Leostream connection broker. So to do that, let me show you my broker. So this is the Leostream connection broker. I'm going to log in first as just the default main administrator that comes with the connection broker. This user has full rights to absolutely everything in the connection broker, so they can configure the pools and the policies and do all the assignments so users have access to the correct resources. But often you have an IT staff that has delegated access to the connection broker. You want people to be able to maybe view the setup but not edit it. You might have desktop administrators who need to see the desktop list and be able to log into those machines, but you don't want them to see the rest of the connection broker setup. This is the power that Leostream roles brings to you. So focusing on roles, I'm going to come into the configuration section here and just show you the roles. Now I have a number of different roles set up here. The broker comes with two. By default, there's the administrator role, which is this full access I've been talking about. And then there's a user role. End users themselves, when they log in, they get a role as well. Their roles, it has a few options that it allows you to set, largely giving the user control over the types of actions they can take on the hosted desktops that they're offered. For example, are they allowed to reboot it themselves from a connection broker login? And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Are they allowed to collaborate with users for the protocols that support that? These are the types of end user permissions that you can set. But where the real power for roles comes from is this role-based delegated administration I'm talking about. So let me show you a couple examples that I have there. One I have is what I'm calling my VM administrator role. So this is for a user who should be able to log into this Leostream Connection Broker web interface and see all the virtual machines that I'm hosting, and then they should have a way to log into those machines easily from here. So if they need to perform a maintenance event on those machines, for example. So to create that role, here I've in the section Connection Broker Administrator Web Interface Permissions, I've given them access just to this administrator web interface. This is the setting that controls, can they log in as an end user and an administrator, just an end user, or just an administrator. So here they are just going to be an administrator. As soon as you select an option here that allows access to the administrator web interface, many, many more options than appear on this page. And all of these options, essentially what they do is they give access, either view full or customize access to each of these individual pages, as well as to certain functionality on the pages. So this role, they can see the message board. They won't have any more access to any of the other pages, except for a particular pool of machines. This is my pool of VMs and happen to be hosted in vCenter. I want to be able to manage my own VMs, but not accidentally reboot someone else's VM on them. So here I have access to my pool. And then, as I mentioned, I'm allowed to reboot. I can query the Leostream agent status, and I'm allowed to view the desktop attributes so I can make sure the IP address looks right and everything, but I'm not allowed to edit any of those. Before I show you what that looks like from a login perspective, I'm going to show you another role, which is this view only administrator role. So I've seen customers use this when they have one person whose job it is to configure the connection broker, set up the pools and the policies. But they have other users in their IT staff who should be able to see how it's set up, but not be able to edit it so that they don't accidentally modify it. That's what this role does. It again, in this case, it's saying this user also is an end user. It's somebody who needs to connect to a hosted desktop, but then they have administrator rights so they can see how this is set up. So this role then just basically sets almost everything to view only. Now the roles are assigned to users through the assignments table, just like policies get assigned. So just as an example, this is our Leostream authentication server. This table, the assignments table, reads like this. It says based on who the user is, and we look by default at their member of attribute in Active Directory to determine the who they are. Based on who they are and where they log in from, and that location can be a client type, it can be a subnet, it's what you define as a location. Here I've said anyone coming in from a web browser. So based on who they are and where they come in from, that determines if they need multi-factor authentication. I'm not requiring that right now. That gives them their role and their policy. So the policy is for end users. That determines what desktops they ultimately can connect to and how they're connected. The role is what we're talking about here. That's what's going to determine what are my permissions in this interface, what are some actions I can take on my end user desktops if I have them. So you notice I have my domain admin. They're the user that's going to be able to see the list of my virtual machines, but they don't get a policy because they're not an end user. But then I have my users who are staff VM managers. In that case, they're getting this view-only administrator role so they can see the broker setup, and they also get a policy so that they can actually connect to some end user desktops. So let's see what that looks like for these users who log in. Here, administrator, this is my Leostream domain administrator. So when they log in, again, they had the role that only shows them the message board and the desktop list. And again, all I see are my VMs. Now, the interesting thing about this role, so here, let me look at this one. The view link takes me to a list of display protocols that I can use to connect to that machine. Well, if I look at that machine here, I can see what the installed protocols are. These columns are customizable. We store a lot of information about the different desktops. And so I added the installed protocol options onto the column onto the page so that I could see, well, how am I allowed to actually connect to these machines? So since RGS or Remote Boost is installed, I'm going to come back to View, and then I'm going to come here and click the option to download, or to download an RG receiver file, which then is going to launch the Remote Boost receiver and connect me in. Now, the trick with that, the configuration that's used to launch that is determined by the default protocol plan. So now I'm back in as the main administrator. The connection broker comes with the default protocol plan. And however these protocols are configured to launch, that determines how the file is ultimately launched. I do need to do some administration on that desktop. So that is the one key thing to remember. Make sure that you edit the default protocol plan so that when the user clicks the view link, a file is going to be downloaded that has the appropriate configuration to launch the display protocol that they're using. And then the username and password that's passed along into that desktop is the username and password of the user who's logged in to the web portal here. So I got logged in to this machine as the domain administrator. So let's look at that other role now. This was the role that gave me view-based access to the administrator portal, but also logs me in as an end user. So this is my user ID here. Now I sign in and I see my offers. These are the desktops that I can connect to. So I can reconnect. I had the role option that allowed me to restart the machine, so I can restart it or I can stop it. I'm already assigned to this machine, so I can release my assignment. And I can also invite users to collaborate. Again, that was all because my role allowed me those permissions. Otherwise, I wouldn't see any of those links. I would just see the connect link, so I could connect in. So by default, we take users who have access to both web interfaces to the end user interface, and then there's an open administrator link, so I can quickly get logged into the administrator view. And now here you'll see I have view access to everything, so I can see everything, but I can't actually edit it. So if I click on here to edit, the fields are there, but there's no way for me to save any kind of changes. And this is handy here. You can see I can actually come in here and quickly get to the vCenter interface if I need to log in and do some administration in there. So that's an overview of the roles. As you might notice, there are many, many options. There are many different ways that you can configure those so that it works out best for your environment. If you do want to try it out, you need some additional information, want to schedule a longer demo, you can feel free to contact us.